All right, now let's go to the opening keynote of day two. It is CISO priorities in software security. It is led by Sandeep Johri, CEO of Checkmark, and the panelists for this are Upendra Mardikar, who is EVP and CISO at 𝗕cie, and the second panelist is Barron-DiCamillo, who is Managing Director and Global Head of Security Operations at Citibank. This is going to be a very interesting session on what they think should be the priorities, CISO priorities in software security. So let's go listen.
Welcome, everybody, to day two of AppSecCon 2023. I hope you've enjoyed yesterday's sessions. The keynote yesterday talked about why boards should care, why boards of directors should care about application security or software security. Today, we have the privilege of having two practitioners, and the topic for today's keynote is what are the CISO priorities in AppSec and how do they do it? We're going to explore those questions. I have the privilege of having, let me introduce myself. I am Sandeep Johri, CEO of Checkmarks. We are an AppSec platform that does application security, obviously. And I'll leave it at that, but let me welcome our two panelists. We have Barron-DiCamillo. Anne is the MD and Global Head of Cyber Operations at Citibank. And Citibank needs no introduction, so I will leave it there. It is one of the largest banks in the world, as everyone knows. We also have with us, and Anne has been in the security business, both on the commercial and the federal side for many, many years. So it's a real privilege to have her here and bring us both of those perspectives. Upendra Mardikar is our second panelist, and Upendra is EVP and CISO at TIAA. TIAA might not be a well-known organization to many people, so let me do a very short introduction on it. It is one of the largest asset managers in the world. It has over 1 trillion assets under management. So it is a real privilege to have both Upendra and with us. And I thought it was really appropriate to have both of them, one, because they have great experience in the security domain, over 15 years for each one of them, actually, maybe over 20 years, actually. But I was thinking about it, there's a famous saying by Willie Sutton, who was a famous bank robber, and someone asked him, why do you rob banks? And he said, well, because that's where the money is. Well, from a security perspective, banks are the prime targets. Banks or financial institutions are prime targets and therefore land up being often some of the best adopters of technology and are always on the leading edge of security solutions. So it's really great to have both of you on the panel. So let's get started with that. My first question was, there's been a lot of change going on. Security vectors or threat vectors keep changing. And it's an ongoing process that I'm sure you've dealt with over the last 2 decades. What do you think are the main trends that you see in security, especially as it relates to AppSec, if you may, from application perspective? And maybe, Anne, I can get you started.
I'm sure. Well, thank you, Sandeep, for having me. I'm really looking forward to this discussion today. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to this crowd. I think application security is a key focus for all of us. Secure coding is the important kind of bedrock associated with how we all deal with the space from practitioners. So excited about this conversation. When thinking about the threat landscape, I think the last 15 months have really proven to be a differentiator. If you look at the geopolitical kinds of winds that have really changed, kind of what we're calling cyber velocity associated with these changes, the whirlwind aspect associated with that, everything from speed of weaponization, sophistication of actors, just dirt cheap infrastructure, all of these things kind of together has created just this velocity of changes. As practitioners, that's really made our job all the more challenging. And I think as you think about the AppSec world as well, there, again, that foundational component piece associated with how we tackle, these ever evolving and really quickly changing aspects associated with the cyberspace. There's a couple of great examples of where the AppSec community is, everything from software supply chain, looking at the wake of the Log4j attacks, and then kind of moving into where we see threat actors continuing to focus now on more the open source code repositories and other links into the supply chain. So I think it evolved from a few of these events. It's been accelerated by just this velocity of information sharing that's happening on the threat actor side, and just this availability of infrastructure and sharing that we've never seen, happen at the pace that's happening on the threat actor side. I think it's really created this need for us to shift left and adopt approaches that really allow us to shift left and provide, information security earlier in the SDLC process and even during deployment and development. I mean, we want to really make sure we're getting at the very beginning of the development process. And so I think the importance of application security is becoming even bigger and bigger, specifically for firms like Citi, where we have 40,000 developers working on banking applications. We want to make sure that we're embedded in the application security that's happening at the very beginning to ensure that we're keeping pace with those changes, and that we have champions associated with those teams and those groups.
Great, Upendra.
Yeah, I mean, uncovered it all. Let me take a step back and see what is happening overall in the industry. I see three pressure points on cyber. The first is rapid digital transformation. All the organizations. So there are two types of organizations in the world. One is digital first, and another are organizations that are going through digital transformation.
Okay.
So when you categorize these organizations into these parts, digital first and digital transformation, every company on the world is a digital company. So it doesn't matter whether you are working for Citi, TIAA, or a tech company, it doesn't really matter. Every company is a digital company. So rapid digital transformation is one of the influencing factors on cyber. The second trend that Anne was talking about is the threat actors are evolving. So in addition to nation state, cyber criminals, cartels, the fraudsters, script kiddies, they have ransomware as service, malware as the service. So rapidly, and generative AI is a new tool in the toolbox. So this is the second category that is influencing the cyber programs. And the third one that is influencing is rapidly changing the regulatory landscape as well, as NYDFS, SEC, they're coming up with, and for the right reasons, they're coming up with compliance and regulatory requirements. While we are doing all these three trends, the application developers, to cater to the digital transformation and being a digital company, they have to be agile. So that is one trend where the first is from the process perspective, they are using Scrums, they are using Kanban, they are using agile methodology to deliver. The second thing is most of the infrastructure, if you will, is going to cloud and software-defined infrastructure, software-defined networks, software-defined environments, if you use it in a broader sense, that is another trend that is coming. So everything is application, everything is software too, if you look at, that second trend. The third one is that people, like Anne was talking about, there are lots of components available online, so why to buy if you can, or why to basically reinvent the wheel? So people are downloading open sources, the supply chain, open source. That is the third trend, just for the time to market. So to answer your question, there are these three trends, which is number one is rapidly, all companies are digital companies. The threat landscape is evolving. The regulatory landscape is evolving, and everything is being software defined with the use of open source, with the use of cloud, and doing in an agile way. So to Anne's point, security has to be embedded, and application security is taking a center stage.
Great. It's kind of paradoxical that on the one hand, there's increasing threats and increasingly complex infrastructure, and on the other hand, we are using more and more open source, which is free to download. So, you would have thought when the threat increases, you lock down, actually you're opening up. So it actually creates a bigger challenge for security personnel and the security staff. Given these trends, when you think about your priorities as a CISO? How do you take all of this all the things that are happening and kind of whittle it down to your organization to one or two, maybe three key priorities that you're driving or key metrics that you're driving?
You want me to take this one first, Sandeep?
Sure.
So I would say there's a couple of things we're focusing on, but I think the first thing is really promoting that culture of security awareness, and not only within the CISO org and in the technical and the infrastructure, development teams, but really just across your firm. It's everyone's responsibility, and so I think we want to make sure that there's a culture of awareness, and that culture of awareness and training is keeping pace with these changes that we talked about, that Upendra and I mentioned previously, and then establishing and maintaining what are the governance frameworks for application security organization, the processes, responsibilities. So making sure that that is clearly defined and understood by all the applicable players and participants in that. And then I think again, it's coming back to identifying KPIs and other things that can kind of help assess those risk positions across the firm, across the organization, across the development teams, and making sure we look at inherited vulnerabilities, and we adopt DevSecOps processes. And again, part of that shift left approach. It really comes down to ensuring that this is just part of the culture. And then I think at the end of the day, we all want to find qualified workforce that can adopt all these principles and be part of this culture.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Upendra?
Again, and it's right on. I would divide it into three parts, right? The first part is culture, like I'm, absolutely correctly said. Culture is having security in the DNA of the organization is extremely important. The second thing is process. Having security in the DNA of the process is also important. And third is technology. Having security in the DNA of technology is also very important. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So culture, if it is in the DNA, the marketing team, the HR team, the product, the user experience, the DX guys, everybody is thinking about security coming up with a security first mindset. I mean, there were trends which says API first, mobile first. We need that security first mindset. So actually having that as a part of the DNA is in the culture side of the equation. Second thing is process. So as we go and start using agile methodologies, the safe methodologies, the scrum of scrums, whatever you are doing, Kanban and other methodologies, how can each and every epic, how can each and every features, how can each and every user story has security as a part of the DNA, so that even if you are following the BDDs or TDDs, it doesn't really matter. The security is just part of the DNA of the process. The third one is technology. Security has always been seen as a naysayer. So how can we go ahead, not only change the tone from being a naysayer to a yaysayer? So that is one thing. In addition, how can we be not just be an enabler, be a partner, so that we know that this digital transformation journey is happening? How can we go ahead and not only enable them, but partner them? So embedding technologies, security in the technology, making it part of the DNA of that technology will be important. Again, security in the DNA, three things: culture as a priority for CISO, putting in the DNA as a process, and then technology.
Yeah. So, and this is always especially at large organizations, it's a change management. So, every customer I've talked to, they talk about their AppSec as a journey. You start in one place, you can't flip everything over, no matter how much support you have from the executives, from your peers. You need to take the whole organization. So, Upendra, how do you think about the AppSec journey? Have you got a framework, maybe a short answer on how you think about it? I know it could be it's a very complicated process with multiple stages, but if you can simplify it to the kind of easiest way of thinking about the journey.
Yeah, so the journey to AppSec, of course, trying to identify, right? I mean, we just typically use the NIST framework, and that framework doesn't change. Identify, protect, detect, recover, respond. Applying that particular NIST framework onto the software security, because we have to use the current trend that is happening, Sandeep, in my mind, is going from implicit trust to zero trust. So when we are going in that, we have to go ahead and embed ourselves using the NIST cybersecurity framework.
Okay. And how have you all at Citi, or even at your previous company, how are you thinking about that journey? How do you take, I don't know, Citi has 400,000 employees worldwide, something of that. How do you take 40,000 developers is challenging, and then you've got hundreds of thousands of employees. How do you get this org sensitized and mature as an AppSec provider, you as an AppSec provider to the org?
So I'm going to focus more on, how should you start a security team's, AppSec journeys versus kind of where, Citi is then kind of move into it. I think the first thing that you need to do as a new leader, maybe in an organization taking a new role, is really assess the current state of the program, including both the strengths as well as the weaknesses, get to know kind of the workforce and where they are along understanding the SDLC process, how security is integrated into those processes and the things we talked about previously. And then I think it's kind of, the second part is really identifying and defining the goals of the program along with the areas of focus. So this is open source management, it's vulnerability assessment, static dynamic code analysis reviews, and all the aspects associated with incident response that would be inclusive of the AppSec teams and the things that they're going to be focusing on. And I think ultimately you want to have that partnership again back into those development teams with your security teams, and so have that synergies between the two and have them almost feel that camaraderie associated with how they're benefiting each other and enabling each other. I think that's the goal that we're trying to get to, is that AppSec is an enablement of the development environment, and that it helps them get to production, get their development finalized in a much more expedited manner, in a secure manner, and they have a kind of a path for keeping the work that they've done up to speed with all the changes. And so leveraging the CI/CD pipelines and all the aspects associated with security being built into that is really kind of that long-term goal, automating as much as you can and earlier in the process, and then again really having that synergies between the two teams.
I'll ask you a pointed question there. Most developers don't wake up saying, I'm really excited, I'm going to spend half my day fixing security challenges that the SEC team has pointed out to me. Yeah. So how have you got them on board? Obviously automating it, making it easier for them. How did you drive that? What Upendra was talking about earlier, making it everyone's business, not something that you're a naysayer, you kind of control their builds and you kind of become a pain, as opposed, getting them to build it. How did you deal with the developers?
Yeah, well, we want to attract talent, right? And talent means that we have to allow them to develop in all kinds of languages, all kinds of operating systems, all kinds of, environments. And so in order to enable that, you have to be part of the beginning of the journey with those teams, because if you're not, then, they're left doing a lot of cleanup, right, on aisle 9, which no one wants to do. And so I think, having the buy-in earlier in that process, then it allows them to do the work that they were hired to do and focus on the things that they want to do. And so I think that's really been the key, is we want to prioritize their time on the reason why they're here at Citi doing development work. We don't want them to spend their days, patching and repatching these things. And so adopting the pipelines and leveraging the abilities of having clean code, introduced into their systems is key. And that comes with that, foundational partnership between the two groups. We want to enable them and let them focus on the work in which they were hired to do at Citi.
So Upendra, for you, a related question. One of the things we've heard, even developers and dev teams that are completely bought into the need for security, what you were talking about. But I still hear a lot of them saying there are 15 tools that are doing AppSec alone, and there's just too many tools. And that is true. If you were at RSA or any of these events, you'd see there's a lot of tools solving interesting, relevant, but single solutions. So how have you dealt with that in your own environment? How do you balance between a single point solution versus a broader solution? How do you reduce the noise between all the vulnerabilities, and anything to that, because that also affects the developer experience and what Anne was talking about.
Yeah, so I think there are two parts to the question. One is and I think Anne was also referring to, one is how do you prevent the tool proliferation? I think that is part one of the question. The second part is, how do we make sure that the DX of this is seamless to the developer experience is seamless? And then the third part is, how do we get all these engineers on board? So the first thing is tool proliferation. What happens is that we have created more like a Google Earth. If you visualize that, we have created a landscape, a kind of cyber landscape, where we can know which companies are overlapping and which can really add value. So internally we have developed that particular model. The second thing is so the tool proliferation, we try to minimize it. So there is obviously a cost of doing business. So there will be some opportunity cost. However, what we are essentially doing is more like a landscape, cyber landscape and cyber tool landscape. The second part to this thing is, how do we make sure that the developer experience is good? We try to make sure that, we put developer first in the mindset. So that's our mindset. Put yourself into the developer shoes and make sure that they are going through this journey in a very seamless way. And third one of the culture. So we believe in TIA. TIA, you mentioned that it's a Fortune 100 company. We have 1,000 plus acquisitions. So it has grown both organically and inorganically. TIA manages $1.3 trillion in asset. So security is not only
like 300 billion there.
Yeah. So security is not just a team sport for us. Security is a community sport, so that is what we believe. So we have guilds internally, where the developers and security teams, they share latest insights. So it's a very dynamic community. And, we have openly and timely communication with our security teams and tools. So anyway, just in the interest of time, these are the three ways, three parts to the question.
Great. We have over 3,000 or even more participants attending AppSecCon. Many of them are early in their experience in AppSec. Many of them are many years in. This is a lightning round because we have 3 minutes to go. What would be a few pieces of advice you would give to people that are relatively early in either their maturity as an org in AppSec, or as individuals, they're early in the game in AppSec? What are some pieces of advice you would give them?
I'll tackle this one first. I think, there's an aspect of clear and open communication channels between the application development community and the application security team that has to, occur. And you want to be part of those communications. You want to be offering them clear guidance and providing these teams meaningful results associated with the things that you find so that they can act on it and address it. I think that's, we can get so caught up in the findings that we don't give them the kind of the key associated with what we're trying to get to and why, the meaningful aspect associated with that. So I think clear communications, clear guidance, giving them, meaningful results is really going to be key for having that collaborative back and forth between the application development teams and the application security teams.
Great. Upendra.
Yeah, Anne covered. I see it as a continuum, just to add. The first left side of the continuum is naysayer. The middle of the continuum, hey, we are business enablers. And then the last part of the continuum is we are partners. So if we, as cyber practitioners, as application security practitioners, if we say that, guys, we are here, we are partners, so that we can go through the data transformation together and be a digital company, that change in mindset is essentially will be very helpful to a new cyber practitioner.
And Upendra, that's a good point. You're saying it's a mindset change even of the security practitioners. They need to think of themselves as partners.
That's it.
This is great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Upendra. These insights were invaluable. I'm sure everyone that is attending AppSecCon will find it extremely useful. We could have spoken for another half hour easily on this, but I think we managed to get quite a bit in a short time. So thanks again for joining. And thanks again to both of you for being customers of Checkmarx. And we certainly appreciate that and hope to continue to help you on the journey. To everyone who's attending, we have an exciting day planned for the rest of the day. There are sessions that go deep into various topics, some of which we covered today. And I hope you find the rest of the day really useful. Thank you, everyone. And thank you again, Anne and Upendra.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep.